Hello and welcome back to part 3 of Are We Living in a Simulation? The series that I wrote that compares how we would currently write a video game that we could drop into to the actual video game that we might actually be living in, written for us. And the basic premise is we're in a destabilized system and it is written like that for the entertainment of the next level up simulants who presumably occasionally drop into this destabilized world. So we are destabilized externally in the external world and also internally. I mean, there is actually no difference, of course, between the external and the internal. We always only can work within our internal world. With this little seed of consciousness, which kind of lives in its own morass of destabilizing universal elements. There you go. So the idea is, right, before I get into my next part 3, the idea is the external universe is vast and it might be ordered, but it looks very dangerous, is ultimately very destructive to us, and we are kind of marooned on this rock in the middle of this kind of foreboding, extremely large universe, which tends to make us feel a little bit insignificant, which is probably destabilizing in itself. Inside our own heads, we have this seed of awareness, which itself is constantly destabilized by emotional winds and vicissitudes and the body going wrong and people insulting us and all the rest of the stuff that goes on. So externally and internally, we live in this destabilized world. All right. So the original torment of being conscious of our ultimate demise, there are a few kind of illusory areas of relief that look safe but ultimately serve to further destabilize the model. We, the deluded simulant, can take a fleeting joy in accumulating things, but due to the way we are built or written, due to habituation, we cannot maintain the interest and joy in the object and have to get the next thing and the next thing. In contrast, we can be miserable for an eternity, bored for an eon, and dissatisfied for life with no natural habituation, or at least a much slower one. So pleasure is fleeting in anything that we attain or get, and misery and boredom seems to be pretty much stuck there. Have you ever wished that you did not buy that car or house or kettle that everyone told you not to buy and then broke? How often do you visit your misery around a decision and an object that should be long gone in the midst of the past? How often do negative thoughts come to mind automatically with heavy emotional weights? And how often do joyous, light thoughts and feelings come to mind? Yeah. The mind has a great capacity for parading our failings, our worries, our fears, like some kind of show, whether we want it or not. And when you're tired, why do negative thoughts and attitudes become even more powerful? Surely it should be the other way around. Wouldn't it be nice if when you're tired, feeling down, feeling exhausted, that automatically comforting thoughts came to mind? But we're not written like that. We're not written like that. There is research to show that inhabitants of poor countries who don't have much and can't get much are actually the most happy. Maybe there is something in the statement that we are each other's shelter. Maybe we find community and a solace in a joint lack of goods, which is lost once things are available to be accumulated. So potentially the richer you become, the more destabilized the model we all live in becomes, not the opposite. Yet the drive is always to become richer and not poorer. You see the contradiction? Again, we're looking at contradictions that through the lens of writing a video game to be in a state of destabilization would likely to be written in. Just these natural contradictions that we keep tripping over and over again. I watched a show on the history of Easter Island once, and I was struck it was proposed how the inhabitants lived together very harmoniously with an egalitarian attitude towards sharing what they had, until the arrival of a ship from Europe. The ship brought novel goods, mirrors, brushes, barrels, which became distributed amongst the Easter Island populace. This distribution of novel goods then created a desire for more, and a ranking based on what you owned, and a possessiveness and factions amongst the populace. Certainly, the richer and more powerful an individual becomes, the more destabilization they seem to propagate, especially if they become extremely rich and powerful in poor countries, where there is a curse of the resources that once a country finds oil and becomes rich, it very rarely benefits the poor inhabitants, and often the rich elite take control even more and become even more brutal and even more full of avarice. So patterns, running through the game like multiple strands of computer code, which, by the way, may be literally true, since some top scientists now hold that the fabric of time and space looks just like computer code. And so the point is, it could be the other way around. We could always place much greater emphasis on accumulating friends and connections and goodwill than on objects. We could have been programmed to never habituate to the pleasure of an object once possessed. Can you imagine how much more stable the planet would be if we were driven to make friends first, and the few objects we did possess we never threw away or got tired of using and repairing? How many global issues would this reversal in our natural tendencies solve? Garbage problems, war problems, climate change problems. Just as an aside, I like classic cars, and occasionally in the Classic Car magazine, there are people who have owned cars for 50 years, bought this car as a young boy and owned it and still keep it and repair it. And even I look at this person, I think there's something wrong with this person, but actually, they are more of a model for how it could be much, much better. But we're not like this. We don't keep things forever. We desire a bigger house, a newer car. How often, and I am guilty of this as well, how often do you shout at your child for damaging a possession? How often do you put your possessions ahead of the feelings of other people, even of the feelings of your child? We are personally assaulted if somebody, at least metaphorically or figuratively or psychologically, we're assaulted if somebody damages our car. We feel violated or raped by an awful intrusion into our living space. We project our feelings into a lot of inanimate objects, and so multiply the way we can be hurt, damaged, or driven to anger, with, of course, a very entertaining, destabilizing result. Do men love their car more than their mate? Possibly women as well. Do you love your dead relative's bedding, couch, paintings, car, or house more than your siblings? Do you put getting your hands on a few $1,000s inheritance over feelings of your siblings? If your sibling gets the object that Granny Smith always said was coming to you, would you fall out with your sibling forever, never talking again? Yes, it happens all the time. It happens all the time, where our feelings are invested more in impermanent objects than they are in the people that we are supposed to love, or in the people that we interact with. So why is that? And the contention is, of course, that through the theoretical lens that we are living in a simulation written for destabilization, then this programming would be a nice subroutine just to keep things interesting. Thank you.